Hey, my barbecue loving friends, let's talk big beef ribs. They have many names like dinosaur ribs or dino ribs for short, or monster ribs, or 123A ribs, or plate ribs, but I just call them amazing beef ribs. So juicy, so fatty, so succulent, and so rich. But do you really need to cook them for 6, 8, 9, 12 hours? In this video, I present you with a 3-hour rib and a 5 to 5.5 hour rib. The question is, was 3 hours enough for perfection? Did the fat render enough? Was it really just the probe test, or is it the temperature? Which of the two do you really need to follow to get them just right? Let's get fired up, trim them up, smoke them up, and grill them to perfection and find out. Even with all the years I've been cooking and with all the experience I have, every once in a while, I bite myself in the tail and screw things up. You know, I've seen several different videos on social media and people cooking big beef ribs for 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours. I'm like, what are these people doing? I can cook them in 2 hours, maybe 3. It's been a while since I had done some, but in my head I was like, I know I can cook them quicker than that. So I decided I was just gonna go ahead and make a little beef rib video, and I got out my Texas Ugly Drum smoker and went and bought some really nice prime beef ribs. Got them all trimmed up, got them all seasoned, got the pit up to temp. It was running really hot, about 325 to 350 when we first started. I mean, it was hot. I don't worry about it a whole lot on the drum because it's a pretty long distance from the fire, so generally it runs really well. Anyway, I threw them in there and monitored them. I spritzed them a little bit, but I was fighting the temperature. I was trying to get it down to 300 and just let it ride at 3, but I had a real hard time getting it down. What I didn't realize when I got my drum back from getting refurbished is that it didn't have the gasket on the door. So even though I had the air choked way down, it was sucking air through the gap that was on the door. A couple hours later, I checked the temperature and it was coming along pretty good. It was sitting about 160, 165, and I'm thinking like, it's almost time to wrap. I'm gonna use butcher paper. Fast forward to when they're done and I'm checking temperature. Now these things are still cooking 325, they're running hot. So I start to probe on them and they're probing 195, 197. I mean, they're up there, but man, they just feel like butter. One of the things that happens when you cook at very high heat, now, I'm not a scientist, so I may or may not be using the exact right terminology here, but heat travels into the meat. The hotter it is in the cooking environment, the quicker that heat travels into the meat. However, does the meat get rendered? Does the fat render, or does the heat need to be in there longer? One of the things that I have found, mainly with briskets, and apparently it applies to big beef ribs too, is just because the temperature is up there and just because they're soft sometimes, doesn't mean that it's fully rendered and that it's soft and juicy and ready to come off the grill. And that's one of the reasons I'm a fan of slowing the temperature down after the wrap and just let it slow down, let the heat traveling into the meat slow down, render that fat and the collagen and all the connective tissue. That stuff has to render in order for the rib to be perfect. I am going to admit that I would have liked another half hour here, but I didn't want to overcook them and I didn't want to dry them out. So there is something to cooking really hot and fast. If it's really hot, you're going to finish at a much higher temperature. And if you're cooking at a lower temperature, say 225, your meat can be ready at 195 to 200. The 3-hour ribs fooled me because they were very soft. That happened one other time to me when we were recording a brisket video. All 3 of them probed super tender at 180. I freaked out. And I was like, I've never had that experience before. I went ahead and pulled them, stuck them in the Cambro for a couple hours, and when I went to slice them, they weren't ready. They were very firm still. So those things do happen. So when we get them to the cutting board, you're gonna see that they are soft, they are cooked good, they're not tough by any stretch of the imagination. They're actually very nice and juicy and tasty, but there's still a little too much fat in there. It's still a lot of fat in the meat. It's not quite rendered. I personally was not happy with my results, so I decided to buy another rack of ribs and do another test and cook these ribs a little bit longer. These ran right at 5 hours, maybe 5.5. Once those were ready, I rested them in the camera for an hour. Then we brought them back into the cutting board, started to slice, and as you see, they were way, way softer, way more rendered. When you see that rib in the video, you can see there's no big intramuscular fat in the meat that is not rendered. You can tell right away, even when I'm cutting them, they're super jiggly, super soft. Those turned out amazing. So did they need to cook for 7 or 8 hours? No. 10 hours, 11 hours, 12 hours? Not at all. When you cook big beef ribs or brisket or any big meats directly over the fire, directly over the coals, you tend to cook a little bit quicker. So I have cooked big beef ribs in 3 to 4 hours in the past. These were extra thick, so they did actually need a little bit more time. They were perfectly good. They were perfectly edible. They were amazing. They tasted fantastic, but I wanted them to be even softer, and I wanted that fat to render within the meat. So is it really the temperature, or is it the probe? Just because it's soft doesn't mean it's perfect. Just because it's at 200 or 205 doesn't mean it's done. If you're cooking with high heat, you may need to run them up to 208 or even 210. So there is a perfect point of intersection somewhere in that cooking process where the probe is soft and the temperature's high enough and that meat starts to feel really succulent and juicy. One of the keys to cooking great barbecue is sit back, relax, let the fire and the smoke do its magic. Don't be in too big of a hurry. Okay, let's get this bad boy unwrapped. Look at that. Woo-wee. That sure looks nice. It looks really, really nice. Look how they're dripping juice. Are these ribs juicy or what? Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, baby. These are tender. This is what I was trying to accomplish last time. We got really close, but this time we nailed it. I can tell you that already. These cooked a little bit longer. This was a 5-hour rack of ribs. Took a little bit more time to get them as tender as I wanted them to be, but they're there now. Let's go ahead and cut them up, give them a big old taste test. Wow, I can feel the softness of the meat right off the bat. I need to get all the way through that membrane down there. Oh, look at that crunch. Yeah. Now remember, I do not remove membranes on these, so I still have my membrane down there, and it got a little bit crunchy. Nothing wrong with that, folks. Man, look at that. Let's pull this middle one out because it's the biggest one. Oh my goodness. Look at that. Just look at that. That is absolutely gorgeous. These are completely rendered really, really nice. You don't see a whole lot of fat in between the muscles there. I usually cut them and cut a slice out of it, but today I feel like taking a big bite out of this thing. Here we go. Wow. Now that rib is done right. Look at this. Look at that. Just falls right apart. Big beef ribs have a lot of collagen, a lot of fat, a lot of connective tissue, very similar to a brisket. So yeah, you're gonna have some wet fingers, oily fingers, sticky fingers. All right, now I'll go ahead and cut and take a proper bite out of here. Look at this. Look, that looks pretty, man. Has a real nice smoke ring. Has a nice little bark on there. Wow, that's good. That's meaty. That's moist. Has a good beefy taste. I mean, that's just awesome. Just awesome. Really, really good. Gotta get some more. What can I say, folks? These big beef ribs are just gorgeous. They're amazing. This one rendered out beautifully. It tastes amazing. It looks amazing. It is amazing. If you guys are interested in my wow rub, it's at pitmaster.us. You'll also find the OG there at pitmaster.us. If you want to up your barbecue game, go to pitmasterclass.us. There we show you how to cook all the popular barbecue meats that you eat at restaurants and in the backyard, step by step on different types of cookers. We talk about fire control and everything else that goes with cooking in the backyard. All right, folks, thanks for watching. Keep the smoke light and make it wow. Boom! Friends, these ribs were amazing. The only thing that'll make these ribs are better is a nice cold Lone Star. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Cheers, my friends. Cheers. And cut the meat. And it's really good.